If you're someone who wants to start a podcast, but you've been afraid of putting yourself out there, or if you have a podcast and you still notice that voice of self-doubt creeping in unwanted whenever you sit down to record, then this episode is for you. I've got Lucy Liu in the studio with me today, who is a recognized mindset expert and a very successful podcaster, to talk about the mental shifts that you can make to overcome self-doubt. The self-doubt that likes to plague us as podcast hosts, myself included. None of us are immune. But the good news is that there is a lot we can do to fix it. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. I was thinking about our conversation today and preparing this episode, and then I got to thinking about your area of expertise and how gifted you are when it comes to our mindset. And we know as business owners, we always have to be working on our mindset. That little voice of self-doubt can get in the way so many times. And I would love to find out from you how you've taken what you've applied or what you teach and applied it to your podcast specifically. So I'm curious, what was one of the biggest mistakes you would say that you made in your podcasting journey? And how did you shift your mindset around it? And what did you learn from it?
Well, to begin with, before I started my podcast, I actually did not listen to podcasts. So I was completely new to the podcasting world. And it was my business coach who connected me with one of the podcasts she was just featured on. So she connected me to the host, and I was like, okay. I started listening to podcasts, and I absolutely immediately fell in love. I started binging all types of podcasts, and I just loved everything about podcasting. It's evergreen. You get to listen to it whenever it's convenient for you. You can listen to it anywhere on earth. It's such a lovely platform. And right when I got on that first feature as a guest, I was like mind blown away. I love this. And I immediately went down the rabbit hole of how people started podcasts. And the one common theme I found was that everyone talked about how they wish they started sooner. And I was like, if everyone's saying that, why not just start my own podcast? And to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I needed help. So I took 3 courses before I started my podcast, but I was able to launch it in 45 days, in 6 weeks, about 6 weeks. I think starting a podcast or anything in life for, you know, is really all about making a determined decision whether or not you want to do it. So it's not about waiting around. It's not about I'm not ready. Like I was not ready. I had no idea what I was doing. But the moment I decided to make that decision, I just jumped all in and I actually just took action because you learn along the way. And talking about mistakes, oh boy, yeah, I made tons of mistakes. Yes, it's amazing to take quick action, but I think the biggest mistake is in the beginning, I wasn't sure what I was doing. I was a general life coach, and I can go a million ways with my podcast. So, really, I did not have a niche. I did not have a CTA that was very clear. So, I did play around a little bit with what I did, but it was a beautiful learning experience. And I think it is the best decision I've ever made in my life.
You know, what's so interesting, Lucy, is to hear you share this story and the fact that there were so many decisions along the way. It was the big decision of, do I start this thing? And then the decision of now versus later, or when is the right time? And so I'd love for you, if you could, to just unpack for us, like when it comes to making these macro decisions and the micro ones, what are some things that we can do, especially as podcast hosts, to help us avoid the fear of making the wrong decision?
Well, that reminds me of a quote by Theodore Roosevelt that I love is in any moment of decision, the best decision you can do is the right thing. The next best thing is the wrong thing, and the worst thing you can do is nothing. I am truly a preacher of making immediate, fast decisions because sometimes we say later and that becomes 3 years. So for me, it's all about making the faster decisions because even if it's a wrong decision, you'll know it's a wrong decision and you can change that in a very efficient manner and it's okay. I think I don't know any podcast hosts who did not have a pivot in their podcast, either in the cover art, either in the intro music. Everyone pivots, and that's totally okay because change, especially in the post COVID world, change is expected. We are all adapting to change, and change is fun. It's a part of life. So it's really about making those decisions to move forward, whether or not it's in the right direction. And the only way you can find out is to actually take action because actions will bring more clarity. Like, I have so many clients that when we work together, they come to me for one thing, and maybe even after one session, they're like, "Oh, Lucy, I don't want to actually do that anymore." Because you realize you get that clarity once you take that first step. So don't worry about decisions. Don't overthink. And I know, especially as women, we overthink a lot. I've had clients who tell me they just spend an hour thinking about how they have been overthinking lately. And that happens a lot.
So true. It's so easy to overthink and to second guess ourselves and to actually believe that voice of doubt that comes for all of us. I mean, case in point, this podcast that you're listening to right now has been rebranded no less than 4 times. Now, do I recommend rebranding a podcast 4 times? No, but it was what was necessary in my own journey as my business shifted and evolved, that the podcast would shift and evolve with it. So, what you said, Lucy, about when you're in the moment, you make a decision and then you realize, well, maybe that wasn't the right decision or the best decision I could have made. I want to go deeper on that because there was something you said there that was gold. And it was this idea that we can change our mind and that we can have the freedom to do so. We can give ourselves the permission to do so. For a lot of people, making those decisions, and this is why we overthink things, is that we feel like it's final. Even the very verb tense is frozen in time. We're no longer deciding something, which is an active tense, but it's a decision, which means it's been made and can't be changed. And our mind can get stuck there. So in those moments, Lucy, where maybe with your podcast, you realized, okay, maybe that wasn't the best decision I could have made. What were some of the steps that you took to give yourself that freedom to change your mind? How did you know when it was time to change your mind?
Well, when you get stuck, obviously, seek help. There was a point in my podcasting journey where I totally felt like, is it going the right way? Am I doing the right thing? So that's when I hired a podcast growth coach. If it weren't for that, I don't think I would have been having this much confidence. But, there's always self-doubt. We never get away really from that negative self-talk, but it's about how quickly you can recover from that, right? And as coaches, we have tools to really expedite the process, and have that self awareness like, oh, Lucy, what are you doing? You have that self awareness, like you catch yourself in the moment that you're saying negative things to yourself, that you are having these negative mindset. And then you turn that around. You turn that into a positive mindset. See, this is about confidence, right? We all need confidence, but you need to reflect, is your confidence issue a technical issue or a self esteem issue? Right? We think about self esteem might be for high schoolers or like someone younger, but no, that's not true. The higher we climb, actually you have more at stake. So no matter what stage you are in your business, you're going to have self-esteem issues that arise temporarily, no matter how powerful you are. So think about if you need technical help, the tech part, get a producer, get a team to help you edit, get a coach to make sure you're doing the right things. Does your audio sound okay? Like those are the technical part. The more, if you have a team helping you, or if you've learned the techniques to do it yourself, you'll feel more confident in what you're doing. So that's one part of confidence. And the other confidence is the constant inner work of exercising your confidence muscle. Like we go to the gym to work out our physical muscles, but what are you doing daily to really make sure your confidence muscle is being built? And that's really, it comes down to another decision. Do you want to live the way you want to live? And that's your decision. We often feel like we're not enough. We don't have enough followers. We don't have enough people on our email list, or we're not ready yet. Not ready enough. Like, I don't have enough help. I don't have enough support. I don't have enough resources. There could be a million things that you feel you're not enough for, but just always remember that enough is also a decision.
So good. And Lucy, I love the distinction that you made between the technical confidence and the inner confidence, the self doubt, right? And the opposite of that, that inner work piece that we all are doing at all times. You're right. That's a never ending journey. I was thinking about the recent rebrand we did for this podcast and how, even though I've run this process 4 times, I've taught dozens of clients how to rebrand and pivot a podcast with great success. I still had that moments plural, where that little voice came in and was like, oh, you're going to be laughed at for this. And suddenly it was third grade all over again, where in the third grade, I had to give this presentation to our class. I'll never forget walking up to the podium that day. I was so excited to teach. I rode horses. So it was all about how to groom your horse and prepare your horse to put the saddle on. I was so excited to teach the class this information. It was a topic I was passionate about. And I remember I got up there and I looked out over my classmates and I saw these 2 little boys laughing at me because they thought horseback riding was stupid. They liked baseball and other sports. And I'll never forget how that felt that day. So that little voice of self-doubt, in this moment where I'm thinking, okay, it is time to pivot. We need to focus, what we're doing with the podcast. There's some changes we need to make. And that little voice was like, oh, it's going to be like third grade all over again. Right here, Courtney is, this person who supposedly knows a lot about podcasting, can't even make up her mind about her own podcast. So to your point, in those moments, it's temporary. This is such an important point, and I want to make sure that you listening hear this, is that, as Lucy said, those moments are going to come. They'll never stop coming, no matter what level of success you reach. And they're temporary. They're temporary. This is so refreshing to hear and such a great reminder. So, Lucy, with your podcast, obviously you've made a lot of decisions along the way, the big macro decisions, the little micro decisions. You've had to flip your mindset around many times. What is something that you think is essential for podcasters to realize about the podcasting journey that maybe isn't talked about enough?
And I think it's really important to talk about and think about the belief, or even just that one belief you've been holding on for way too long that's stopping you from starting your podcast or growing your podcast. And for me, that came from having the name as a celebrity. So my name is Lucy Liu, and I, for decades, I was hiding. I was like in a cave because I felt like someone out there by the name of Lucy Liu, it's so amazing already. She's so famous and she's so talented. I love her so much. I can't even hate her. Like, she's an actress, she's a director, she's an artist. She is just so absolutely incredibly amazing that I can't even hate her. But my belief for me was that she is so incredible and I will never surpass her. So for me, I always felt behind. And maybe you didn't have the same problem as me, especially I live in Los Angeles. So when I go to these famous restaurants, people will be like, are you the Lucy Liu? Right? And I'm like, oh, sorry to disappoint you. I'm not the Lucy Liu. And that's how I grew up. And I always felt behind. I always felt like I was nobody. Like, who am I to do this? Who am I to do that? And for me, it took decades of personal development to overcome that belief. And for you, it might be something similar but different. Maybe your name is too common, your name is too long, too short, too hard to pronounce. If you've ever had a time where you felt like you were disappointing someone, or you just felt like you're behind, or just anything, any belief you've been holding on, just let me tell you that no matter how long you've been holding on to them, you can let go of it if you choose to. And don't let any of those beliefs stop you from working on your podcast, because I could have thought about it. I'm like, well, the Lucy Liu, she has a podcast too. Who am I to start a podcast in the name Lucy Liu Show? And for me, I was like, okay, Lucy, we're not going to think about all those things that you could be thinking about and overthinking about, because they're facts, right? I can't change any of that. So the only thing I can change is about my mindset, thinking about what can I do to bring value to even just one listener that tunes in. And trust me, you're going to get more than one download, right? So it's all about shifting your focus, because what you focus on grows. For me, I just thought about, okay, if I change the life of one listener from one episode, I've done my job to making a contribution to a better world. So once I shifted my belief to that, I just held on to that belief and that why for the rest of my episodes. And that's all I'm going to think about. I'm just going to shift the mindset of one listener. I'm going to help my one listener. And that's all it takes for you to start and grow. And there's going to be more than one. And even if you have 20, that's a classroom. Oh my goodness. Even if you have 50 listeners, that could be like a whole small auditorium already. Just think about how amazing that is.
Yes, it's fun to visualize that. And if you Google auditorium of 50, auditorium of 100 people, like Google will literally serve up images to you of these audiences. And think about that. It's a beautiful visual. I've done this as an exercise myself to see, okay, we're getting this many downloads. Wow. Look at if I were really on stage talking to that many people, and it really just, the weight of that and the responsibility that we get to have as podcast hosts, the opportunity that we get to have to reach out and to touch these lives and these hearts is so powerful. So Lucy, thank you so much for being here today to share your journey. And most importantly, to remind us that these little decisions are made moment by moment, and that in every moment we get to choose. And that's the beautiful thing, that we get to choose. You get to choose where to spend your time. I am so grateful that you choose to show up and spend some of your valuable time here with me on the show. And that's why in the next episode, I'm going to do something that I have never done before, but I'm kind of excited about it. And I'm going to hand you our high converting episode framework. Now, this is one of over 37 frameworks that we teach our clients in order to help them structure their podcasts to be able to convert more listeners to leads. So if you've got a podcast right now that is not converting leads, or at least not as many as you want to be, or if you are looking to start a podcast and that's your ultimate goal is to turn your show into a lead generation tool, then don't go anywhere, because I've got that right here for you up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.